Hey, I'm Grant with Grant's Game Rex. This is my monthly video on the best board game expansions coming to retail. These are extra stuff for games that already exist. You know, more cards, more modes, more modules, all that sort of stuff for games that are already out. I've got 14 expansions that are coming to retail here in August. I hope you find something that you're excited about. First up this month, Capstone Games is releasing Pirates of Maracaibo Commander's expansion. Pirates of Maracaibo came out only a few years ago, and it itself was kind of a more streamlined version of Maracaibo. It was a race game. Pirates of Maracaibo is like a race game where you are moving across the board and stopping at these various different cards and doing things and gaining stuff. Well, this expansion plays 1 to 4 players in about 30 minutes, and it is a medium weight game. This adds a lot of different stuff to the game Pirates of Maracaibo. There is a new Explorer board where you can, and in fact the Explorer board is double-sided and can be mixed and matched, so there's a lot of setup variability in the Explorer board. There's a ton of different cards, and there are a number of things like it adds rum to the game, and you can use rum to activate special abilities, to sell, to gather. You'll also get these ship commanders, and ship commanders give you special abilities. They also have additional abilities that you can unlock by putting rum on the cards. And the special abilities from the ship commanders are, you know, all very, very powerful. They're the type of thing where you're like, this breaks the game, but all of them are breaking the game, so therefore none of them are breaking the game. So, but if you want to add cool sort of asymmetric special abilities with the ship commanders, you can do that with this Commander's expansion. You know, it also unlocks forts that you can attack on various different islands, and when you gain one of those forts, you can add it to your commander card and unlock different abilities in that way as well. So just a lot of new stuff for the game Pirates of Maracaibo. Change My Mind is releasing 2 expansions for the game Change My Mind. Both of these play 3 to 8 players in 30 to 60 minutes, and they're lightweight party games. We've got Change My Mind for the family. One thing to note is that these are standalone expansions, meaning that you could combine the content of this with the base game Change My Mind, or you could play this standalone. You don't need the base game to play this. If you have this box standalone, it is just 3 to 5 players instead of 3 to 8 players, so know that. The base game of Change My Mind, well, let me tell you what the game is first. It's a party game where there is a card with 5 things on it, and those things are, the cards are just different category stuff, like replacements for toilet paper is one that I saw in a game, or things that are closest to soup. You know, and then is it cereal? Is it the ocean? Is it chili? You know, and the active player is going to rank that stuff however they want, however they think is the closest to soup, and then other people are going to try to predict how they rank that. However, there's an additional step here where you can argue your case as the other players and try to change the mind of the active player. And then whoever gets closest to where the active player ends up, whoever gets the most ranked correctly, will get the card, and that will be a point. The base game, you know, has a number of sort of adults-only cards in it. So this Change My Mind for the family is intentionally just one that works for the family. If you want to lean the other direction, there is also Change My Mind Chaos Unleashed. This is a not safe for work standalone expansion. So again, if you combine it With the base game, it's 3 to 8 players, but if you want this box standalone, it is 3 to 5 players, and it's the same gameplay of ranking stuff on cards, but this one is going to be all dirty stuff, about, sexy time, and about drugs, and about, adult topics like that. So that has changed my mind. Chaos Unleashed. Chip Theory Games is releasing a couple of expansions to the game Wroth. I talked about Wroth in my best games coming to retail video just a few days ago. Wroth is an area control game where you will be deploying troops to the map, and you have basic troops, and you also have sort of these upgraded troops represented by die. But the big thing about Wroth is that all of the factions, you play as a faction, and all of those factions are asymmetric. All of them have different troops that you need to deploy, different abilities that you get for those troops, different ways to spend these gems that will give you special abilities. So, some of the replayability and the depth of Wroth comes in sort of learning those different factions and playing through those different sort of asymmetric factions. So they are releasing Wroth Venna. This plays 1 to 4 players in 60 minutes, and it is a medium weight game. This is a new faction for the game. So the base game of Wroth, I believe, comes with 5 factions in it, but you can add a 6th faction and even a 7th faction, which is what I'll talk about next. This Venna faction are full of exiles and outcasts, proficient in spells and incantations. So it's just literally a new faction you can add to the game. And then they're also releasing Wroth Paldeyn. This plays 1 to 4 players in 60 minutes, and it is a medium weight game. This is another faction for the game of Wroth. So, a bunch of different factions to play through, to learn, to combine, to play against. I think it will change the game, how the game feels based on what you're playing as and who you're playing against. So this just adds more replayability. This Paldeyn faction has gleaming armor, thick shields, and an iron will. So just, you could buy both of those and add more factions, or just buy one of those depending on, what you think sounds cool and what your play style is. Cryptozoic is releasing DC deck building game Crisis Expansion Pack 5 Dark Knight's Death Metal. I dare you to try to say that 5 times in a row. That is a long title for this. Plays 1 to 5 players in about, and it's a medium weight game, and it takes a little bit longer than it takes to play than it takes to say. It takes longer to play than it takes to say. This is an expansion for the DC deck building game. A deck building game where you are building up your deck by adding cards, purchasing cards, adding it, making your deck stronger throughout the game, and features a lot of characters from the DC universe: Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, all of that sort of stuff. This DC deck building game, Dark Knight's Death Metal, does change the game in that it makes it cooperative. So the regular game, the DC deck building game, is a competitive game. This now makes it cooperative. Players must work together to defeat the Batman Who Laughs dark forces before they consume the multiverse. So you still pick a character. That character has its own deck. Characters in this expansion have powers they can use to support their teammate and beat the dangerous crisis cards. So if you've always wanted to play the DC deck building game in a cooperative fashion, this is one of the first times that you can do that. Cryptozoic is also releasing DC deck building game Arkham Asylum Shadows expansion. Plays 2 to 4 players in 60 to 90 minutes, and it is a medium weight card game. This is meant specifically for the DC deck building game Arkham Asylum version of the DC deck building game, but it can be played with any DC deck building base game. So, you know, it's specifically designed for the Arkham Asylum game, but if you want to play it with a different DC deck building game, you can do that. This goes back to the competitive version of the game. This is not cooperative. This is a competitive version. It adds dozens of new cards to the game and lets you play as various members of the Bat family or as part of the League of Assassins. So more characters to explore, more asymmetric factions, decks, and stuff to play as. Speaking of asymmetry, Leader Games is releasing a couple of expansions to the game Ahoy. Ahoy is a game that came out several years ago that was meant as more of an easier introduction to asymmetric games than a game like Root. You know, Leader Games is famous for the very complex game Root. Well, Ahoy is a quicker game, a simpler game than Root, but all of the factions play very asymmetrically. And sometimes I'm talking about asymmetric powers and special abilities. And when I'm saying that, like, that's a special ability that's different than any other special ability that will lead you down different paths. Well, Ahoy is a game where the characters play almost totally separate games. You are on the same sort of shared field of play, but you're doing wildly different things on that field of play. In Ahoy, you are pirates and you are sailing around the different tiles and doing stuff. But there were 4 different factions in the base game. Well, we have the first expansion I'm going to talk about is Ahoy Rivals and Renegades. This plays 2 to 4 players in 45 to 75 minutes, and it is a medium weight game. This adds 2 new factions to the game, 2 new asymmetric character types to the game. They are called the Blackfish Brigade and the Shellfire Rebellion. You can use them to replace the Bluefin Squadron and the Mollusk Union in the core game. So this doesn't expand the player count. It's still a 2 to 4 player game. And instead of playing as 2 of the factions in the base game, you can take those factions out and instead play with these ones. Ahoy does need very specific faction types in the game. You know, you need to play, if you're playing a 2-player game, you need 1 yellow faction and 1 blue faction. Or if you're playing a 4-player game, you need 2 yellow factions and 2 blue factions. The game breaks down if you're like playing all 4 blue factions or something like that. And so that is why this is saying, like, you can use these new character types to replace 2 in the base game to play, or you can also add them all together in a 2 versus 2 team mode. So if you want to play like all of one colored faction, you then have to play 2v2 and you are working together with a teammate to try to beat the other team. So just so you know a little bit, the Blackfish Brigade are fierce orcas who menace the sea with their roving whale pod, and the Shellfire Rebellion are tenacious turtles who use catapults to launch comrades far and wide. The other expansion that I'm going to talk about for Ahoy is Fang and Fortune. This plays 3 to 4 players in 45 to 75 minutes, and it is a medium weight game. This adds also 2 other new factions. This adds the Leviathan and Coral Cap Pirates. You can use these to replace 1 or both of the smugglers from the base game, from the core game. So these are, again, sort of, fitting into that specific balance that Ahoy needs. These are 2 new factions you can play, but you do need to replace a couple of the ones from the base game so that you have the right sort of balance between the various different factions in the game. The Leviathan is a terrifying beast that consumes all in its path, growing gargantuan, and Coral Cap Pirates are jolly rascals who just want to throw a party after some light mercenary work. So a bunch of different factions to play as. Sticking in this, pirate sort of theme that we have this month, apparently, sailing the seas, we've got 7th Sea City of 5 Sails Fate and Fortune expansion. This plays 2 to 4 players in 20 to 80 minutes, and it is a medium weight game. 7th Sea City of 5 Sails is a expandable card game that's a pretty medium weight expandable card game, and it is set in the swashbuckling world of the 7th Sea role-playing game. So it's a card game sort of inspired by this role-playing world. And in 7th Sea City of 5 Sails, players control one of 5 factions as they fight to influence, control, and explore the independent and unruly City of 5 Sails. Well, this expansion, adds a lot of content. This is a 149 card expansion to the game. It introduces new leaders for each faction, which radically change the way each faction plays. It has a new gambling maneuvers and new gambling techniques that will allow you to press your luck for greater rewards. And there's also a new ways to play the game with these first mates play variant. So, yeah, if you want a lot of different cards for the game, 7th Sea City of 5 Sails, the Fate and Fortune expansion will provide. Sea Cow Games, in association with All Play, is releasing Flock Together, Birds of a Feather Eggspansion. This plays 1 to 6 players in 25 to 150 minutes, and it is a medium weight game. Flock Together was one of my favorite cooperative games of last year. It is a sort of leveling up worker placement game and resource management game. You were moving workers around the board, gaining resources, using those resources to level up your characters, and then fighting various different bad guys. And you had to cooperatively defeat all the bad guys before too many seasons pass, before the game ends and the rounds end. And so, there was a ticking timer where you were like, we gotta level up so we can beat these guys. Every character, and in fact all of the bad guys, come with these little booklets, and one of the fun things about the game is literally leveling up your character, and you flip to another page of the booklet, and now you've got better abilities and better capacity for resources and better fighting ability, and just a lot of leveling up across different ways. And the bad guys can also level up if you don't defeat them, and so that becomes a problem, as you get later into the game. It's a really great, and it's a cooperative game that had a sense of humor to it. You were playing as these different chickens trying to protect your coop and fight against bad guys, but your chickens were like Wyatt Chirp and things like that. It's just full of puns and silliness. I mean, you might have gotten that where this is called an Eggspansion, not an expansion. One of the things to note about this Birds of a Feather expansion is the base game was 1 to 5 players. This adds a 6th player. It now makes the game 1 to 6 players. So it adds all the components you need for a 6th player for the game. It also adds 6 chicken heroes, and all of the chicken heroes, are slightly asymmetric in that they have different costs for leveling up, different, special abilities that you'll gain along the way. So if you've played through a lot of these sort of chicken heroes in the base game, this has 6 new chicken heroes. It also has 6 new predators that you need to fight against, and it has 3 extra weather conditions, which can change the rules of a round. So just adding a bunch of content and replayability with the different characters in the game. Steve Jackson Games is releasing Munchkin, Not My Monkeys. This plays 3 to 6 players in 1 to 2 hours and is a lightweight card game. Munchkin has been around for a long time these days. It is sort of the quintessential take that, attack your friends card game. You are playing cards in front of you and attacking everybody else, and you definitely don't want to get out into the lead too early because then everybody will attack you and you will not win. And there's been a ton of different expansions to Munchkin over the years that add different types of cards that have different abilities and all, very silly artwork on it. This is a 56 card expansion to the game. It's got monkey suits, it's got bananas, it's got a bunch of stuff. So if you're a fan of Munchkin, check out Not My Monkeys. UVS Games, in association with Wise Wizard Games, is releasing Star Trek Star Realms Borg Invasion expansion. This plays 2 to 4 players in about 20 minutes, and it is, I don't know, maybe on the edge of lightweight to medium weight. Star Trek Star Realms came out last year, and it's essentially a version of the 2-player deck building game Star Realms, but with all Star Trek sort of stuff. So it does tweak the rules of the game based on sort of thematic stuff from Star Trek, but then it's just a lot of characters that you know from the Star Trek universe. But 2-player deck building game, you are building your deck and attacking each other. This maintains the same thing. This is sort of still Star Realms inspired, set in the Star Trek universe. But this adds 2 new exciting multiplayer game modes. Instead of just fighting against each other, this is now cooperative, or it's multiple players versus 1 player. And the Borg Collective is essentially the bad guy in the game. So either players can work together to overcome the Borg Collective, or a single player will assume the role of the Borg, and everybody's going to be fighting against them as they try to assimilate all resistance. So, a lot of different, if you like Star Trek, this is definitely worth checking out. Just a bunch of different cards and new game modes for the game. Zephyr Workshop, in association with Japanime Games, are releasing AEGIS 2nd Edition. This plays 1 to 6 players in 25 to 120 minutes, and it is a medium weight game, but maybe on the the edge of medium weight to lightweight. This is a standalone expansion to the game AEGIS Combining Robots. So you can combine this with the base game, or this is very standalone. You don't need the base game at all. You just can play this. This is almost like, I wasn't sure whether to include this in my expansions video or my new editions video, because it almost does feel like a new edition, even though they're calling it an expansion. So there are all new robots and heroes vying for control in a fighting tournament. One of the coolest things about the game is that you can literally combine robots together to make them more powerful to, in your sort of fighting tournament, you can try to combine robots, and now they have a bunch of new abilities and level ups sort of thing. This new box features dozens of new robots that are streamlined for easier learning and more tactical depth. There is a roster of new commanders and pre-built teams. So if you want to just jump right into the game instead of sort of crafting your team and drafting different characters, you can jump right in with these pre-built teams. There is a new game mode, Starpoint Arena. Play with respawning robots and just rack up points. So essentially, as soon as your robots get defeated, they respawn right away, and so it's just sort of chaos in there. There's also a solo mode in the game for the first time. Face off against powerful boss robots and their customizable armies. There is a 2-player draft rules here, so if you want a little more strategic depth, instead of just playing with the pre-built teams, you can draft your teams here. And there are 3 boards with printed terrain. So there are, a bunch of different boards to play on, which will change the sort of arena, change the battle. And again, this game's contents are 100% cross-compatible with the first game if you want to combine boxes, but you don't have to. If you like level it up stuff, then check out AEGIS Combining Robots 2nd Edition. So that's what I got for you this month. Those are 14 expansions coming to retail here in the month of August. As always, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for subscribing, for liking. If you're in the Southern California area, please come to my new Green Team Wins live show at the Comedy Store on September 7th. I would love to see you there, or tell other people about it. It's going to be a fun show. It's a super unique night of comedy. So thanks so much, everybody. I'm Grant with Grant's Game Rex.